James Holloway stood on the train platform with a knot in his stomach, clutching the photograph that had arrived 3 months ago. The woman in the picture was petite and slender, with a serious expression and dark hair pulled back severely. Her letter had been brief and practical. She needed a husband. He needed a wife. They'd agreed to a mail-order arrangement, and now she was arriving on the afternoon train from Philadelphia. James was 35, owner of a moderately successful cattle ranch outside of Prescott, Arizona. He'd been alone for 5 years since his mother passed, and the loneliness had become a physical weight. He'd written to a matchmaking service with specific requirements. Someone practical, good with numbers since he needed help with the books, and yes, he'd specified slender. His farmhouse was old, the furniture older, and he'd had enough problems with broken chairs and wobbly bed frames without adding extra weight to the equation. The train wheezed into the station with a screech of brakes and a cloud of steam. James straightened his collar nervously, scanning the passengers as they disembarked. He waited, watching thin women pass by with their families, watching businessmen and cowboys and children. Then he saw her. She was nothing like the photograph. Nothing at all. The woman walking toward him was tall and generously curved, with wide hips and a full figure that strained against her traveling dress. Her face was round and flushed from the journey, her auburn hair escaping from its pins in wild curls. She carried a worn carpet bag and moved with a deliberate heaviness, her eyes scanning the platform until they landed on him. "Mr. Holloway?" she called out, her voice deeper and stronger than he'd expected. James nodded mutely, unable to form words. She approached him with squared shoulders, and he could see in her eyes that she knew. She knew he was disappointed. She knew the photograph had been a lie. "I'm Margaret Brennan," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. "I expect you're wondering about the photograph. It was my sister's picture. I knew no man would agree to marry me if they saw what I really looked like. I apologize for the deception, but I won't apologize for existing." The words hit James like a slap. The hurt beneath her defiance was palpable, and despite his shock, he felt ashamed. "Miss Brennan," he started, but she cut him off. "I understand if you want to send me back. I have enough money for return fare, but I'd ask that you at least let me stay the night at a boarding house before the next train. It's been a long journey." James looked at this woman. This stranger who'd traveled 2,000 miles based on his advertisement, who'd been desperate enough to send her sister's photograph instead of her own. He thought about turning her away, about sending her back and waiting for another bride. But something in her eyes stopped him. Pride mixed with resignation. Hope battling with expectation of rejection. "I won't send you back," he heard himself say. "We made an agreement. Let's at least give it a try." Margaret's eyes widened with surprise, then narrowed with suspicion. "You're just going to go through with it? Marry someone who doesn't look like what you ordered?" Ordered. The word made James wince. "You're not a catalog item, Miss Brennan. You're a person, and you came all this way on good faith. The least I can do is the same." The wedding was simple, performed by a justice of the peace who'd married dozens of mail-order couples and asked no questions. Margaret signed her name with a steady hand, but James noticed she wouldn't meet his eyes. The ride to the ranch was awkward and silent, both of them processing what they'd just done. The farmhouse was neat but clearly built for function over comfort. Margaret looked around with an appraising eye while James carried in her bag. "I'll show you the bedroom," he said quietly, leading her upstairs. The bedroom contained a bed that had belonged to his grandparents, old and creaky but sturdy enough. Or so James had thought. Margaret stood in the doorway, clearly hesitant. "I'll sleep on the couch," she offered. "I don't want to impose." "You're my wife now," James said more sharply than he intended. "You'll sleep in a bed. That first night was a disaster." Margaret sat gingerly on the edge of the bed, and it groaned ominously. When she finally lay down, there was a terrible cracking sound, and the entire frame gave way, collapsing to the floor with a crash that echoed through the house. Margaret scrambled up, her face burning with humiliation. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I told you this was a mistake." James stood frozen, looking at the broken bed, then at Margaret's mortified face. And suddenly, inexplicably, he started to laugh. Not cruel laughter, but genuine surprised laughter at the absurdity of it all. "Well," he said, still chuckling, "I guess we're both sleeping on the couch tonight." Margaret stared at him like he'd gone mad. "You're laughing? What else can I do?" "It's just a bed. I can fix it." He looked at her tear-filled eyes and felt his amusement fade into something more serious. "Margaret, I'm not going to pretend this isn't awkward. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't expecting someone different, but I'm also not going to treat you like you're some kind of burden. You're here. I'm here. Let's just figure it out." The next morning, James reinforced the bed frame with new lumber, making it twice as sturdy as before. Margaret cooked breakfast, and James discovered she was an extraordinary cook. Better than anyone he'd ever known. The biscuits were fluffy, the eggs perfect, the bacon crispy. As he ate, he watched her move around the kitchen with surprising grace for someone so solid. Days turned into weeks. Margaret proved herself invaluable with the ranch books, her neat handwriting and quick mind organizing years of James's haphazard record-keeping. She was strong too, able to help with chores that would have exhausted a smaller woman. She could carry buckets of water without complaint, lift feed sacks, work alongside him without tiring. But it was the small things that began to change James's perspective. The way Margaret hummed while she worked, filling the house with sound after years of silence. The way she laughed, deep and genuine, when one of the chickens stole a biscuit from the windowsill. The way she looked at him sometimes, when she thought he wasn't watching, with a mixture of hope and wariness that made his chest tight. One evening, about 2 months after her arrival, James found Margaret sitting on the porch, looking at the sunset. He sat beside her, and they were quiet for a moment before he spoke. "I was wrong," he said quietly, "about what I thought I wanted. I wrote in that advertisement that I wanted someone slender because I thought it was practical. But the truth is, I was shallow. I thought appearance mattered more than character." Margaret turned to him, her expression guarded. "And now?" "Now I realize how foolish I was. You've made this house a home, Margaret. You've brought life back to this place, back to me. And when I look at you now, I don't see someone who doesn't match a photograph. I see someone strong and capable and real, but not beautiful," Margaret said, her voice flat. James reached for her hand, surprised by his own boldness. "I'm learning that beauty isn't what I thought it was. My mother used to say that handsome is as handsome does. I thought it was just something old people said. But watching you work, hearing you laugh, seeing how much care you put into everything you do. Margaret, you're the most beautiful person I've ever known." Tears spilled down Margaret's cheeks. "You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true, and because I'm falling in love with you." Margaret looked at him with disbelief, then wonder, then something that looked like joy breaking through years of being told she wasn't enough. "I sent my sister's photograph because I've spent my whole life being told I was too much. Too big, too loud, too hungry, too everything. I thought if I could just get here, if I could show you I was useful, maybe you wouldn't send me back. I don't want to send you back. I want you to stay. Not because we signed papers, but because I can't imagine this place without you anymore." She kissed him then, sudden and fierce, and James wrapped his arms around her, feeling the solid reality of her, the warmth and strength that no photograph could ever capture. They went inside together, and when they climbed into the reinforced bed, it held them both without a single creak. The following months brought a transformation neither had expected. James found himself defending Margaret fiercely when they went to town, shutting down whispers with cold glares. He didn't care what people thought. This woman had saved him from a half-life of loneliness, had filled his days with purpose and his nights with companionship. Margaret bloomed under his acceptance, her confidence growing. She started a garden that became the envy of the county, her strong arms turning hard soil into fertile ground. She began baking for church socials, her desserts so popular that women who'd once whispered about her began asking for recipes. She sang while she worked, her deep voice carrying across the ranch, and James found himself stopping just to listen. One evening, as they sat on their reinforced porch swing, another addition James had built, Margaret placed his hand on her rounded belly. "There's something else that's going to need reinforcing," she said with a shy smile. James felt the tiny movement beneath his palm and realized that this woman, who'd arrived with a lie and been met with disappointment, had given him everything he'd never known he needed. Not a slender bride who fit his narrow expectations, but a force of nature who'd broken his bed and rebuilt his life. "I love you," he said, the words coming easily now. "Every magnificent inch of you." Margaret laughed, that deep, joyous laugh he'd come to cherish. Even though I'm not what you ordered? James pulled her close, feeling her warmth, her strength, her absolute rightness in his arms. Especially because you're not what I ordered. You're so much better than anything I could have imagined. You're exactly what I needed, even when I was too foolish to know it. The bed they'd broken that first night still sat in the barn, a reminder of expectations shattered and assumptions challenged. But the new bed James had built, reinforced and solid, held them both through countless nights, through the birth of their children, through years of laughter and love and life lived fully. It held the weight of their love, which grew heavier and more precious with each passing day, proving that the strongest foundations are built not on shallow preferences, but on acceptance, respect, and the courage to see beyond what we think we want to discover what we truly need.